Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Voltron Season 3 episode reviews. This one's going to be for episode 4, 5, 6, and 7, the second half of the season overall. And yeah, the episodes are called Hole in the Sky, The Journey, Tailing a Comet, and The Legend Begins. Just looking at my TV over there, where I have the episodes up on Netflix. And yeah, I think I chose a pretty good point at which to break up the reviews, because 1 to 3 were like, okay, they're the team building episodes, and then like 4 to 7 are like, oh, here's all this crazy like alternate reality stuff. Shiro might be a clone or a robot or something like that, and yeah, like full backstory that we've been waiting since like season 1 for. It just like kept on like delivering and presenting a lot of questions and so on. I was very, very impressed with these 4 episodes. Overall, I think the biggest thing I have to say at the start is just like I absolutely need to rewatch these episodes again to fully take them in, because like especially episode 4, where they started introducing some of this alternate reality stuff, which they made more important later on. I was just kind of like, whoa, where are they going here? Is this just a random episode where we're just suddenly going to do like alternate reality and have fun with that? But then it's like, no, alternate reality is suddenly this incredibly important thing with like Voltron is made of basically an ore that comes from a comet that allows you to travel between dimensions without like just dying because of the transfer. So that immediately adds importance to that material. It establishes why Voltron is so powerful and special, and why the lines are more or less invincible. And then the alternate reality stuff is really important into basically why everything is happening the way it's happening. It explains the origin of why Zarkon is evil, why Haggar is the way she is, and really I think presents this idea of like, okay, there's the Galra Empire, and then there's this kind of evil presence from the like alternate dimension. It's very, very interesting. I didn't expect them to take it in this direction, because I think in part just because there are so many other like open plot points. Like this season completely didn't address like the fact that Keith is Galra. Maybe some of his reactions when like, you know, the blades in the early episodes were getting insulted, you know, showed some of his thoughts on that. But in general, never a plot point, never really brought up all that much, which was weird. Outside of the very first episode, they didn't really do anything with Paige and Matt and her trying to find them, or the Kerberos mission where her father is, that sort of thing. They didn't cover that. Earth again, you know, wasn't mentioned, which, you know, they can do that whenever they really want to, but I think that's one of the ones where I'm kind of really looking for when they eventually decide to touch on Earth again. But yeah, a lot of different things going on here. The series definitely has a lot going on right now. I just hope that like kind of some of the problems with season 2, they don't finally decide to resolve a lot of this stuff and then it doesn't work out so well. Now, they've given me some confidence here, a lot of confidence, because of how well they executed on the origin story of Voltron with the Alpha or Zarkon flashback. That was really, really well done. I saw that pop up as a little description as my Netflix loaded the last episode, and I was just like, wow, we're getting this as like the last episode before the break. That's really cool, and I was excited, but I'm just kind of like, okay, keep your expectations in check. They might not deliver everything, but they gave me more than I even expected. All I was really looking for was like, who are the original 5 Paladins? Basic story for like the origin of Voltron and why, you know, this stuff is going on. But I felt they really told a good story around it, and explained a lot of kind of question mysteries that have been going on in the series, and that like it's easy to forget that, you know, Allura is like technically over 10,000 years old, but part of that was because she was in like cryosleep for like most of that time, so that explains why she was able to survive up to now. Zarkon, though, has actually been alive, not in cryosleep, for over 10,000 years. Same with Haggar. And this episode explains why they're actually still alive, and that, part of the backstory episode is that quintessence is literally kind of life force. And so if you get pure quintessence and kind of incorporate it into yourself, it effectively allows you to live forever. That was kind of part of the reveal there, that there was this cat that they more or less implied was only meant to live for a few years, and then they gave that quintessence and it's still alive when Alfor comes back and he's much older. So that was a very interesting reveal, kind of establishing to some degree why Zarkon turned from being a Galra warrior leader, of course, but to being the kind of empire guy that we know, who's obsessed with like incorporation of quintessence into Galra technology and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, it's in part, yes, because of the influence of his wife, who is Haggar. That was one of the reveals that we got here, that Zarkon and Haggar are actually married. Going off to reveal that at the end of last season that Haggar is Altean, we find out that she was a scientist who was kind of exploring the basically the after effects of the comet that crashed on Zarkon's home planet. That there was the comet and the material, and they used that, of course. But what it left behind was like a dimensional portal, basically within the planet. And Alfor was basically very much like, we need to do everything we can to close it. And Zarkon initially was all for that, but basically because of her insistence on discovering and researching it more, he agreed to kind of keep it open, and like their relationship developing and becoming husband and wife. You could sort of tell that in part it was definitely her influence on him that kind of changed him to a degree. But then the big reveal came out that like that much exposure to pure quintessence is kind of what it kind of turns you insane to a degree. That like it gives you this kind of power, it allows you to live forever, but it basically turns you mad and like eventually kills you over time. I assume just because it is like pure energy, basically, that it just overloads your body. And what they had to do, and the big thing that happens, is that Zarkon and even his wife Haggar, because I can't remember what her name was as an Altean, both of them were not like evil by the time they went into the portal. The kind of subtle kind of betrayal of Alfor, it really was the kind of evil presence within the other dimension possessing them that kind of is what has turned them evil as such. In that they literally say within the episode that they were both killed, they both died and were dead as far as their medical technology was aware, but then they were brought back to life. So effectively they are both like zombie kind of type things to a degree. They're both like resurrected, but they're still alive because, like, unless they give some really technical explanation, like we never get the reason for, we never get the reveal that like Lotor is Haggar's son. We get that he's Zarkon's son, but they never actually commit to just saying that like Haggar is Lotor's mother. And I don't know if that's a thing, in that like she never just calls him son or anything like that. So the way she treats him is almost as if he is some sort of outsider, that he like he had like a child with someone else and she doesn't like him or something like that. That's part of the reason he's been banished or something like that. Which is another thing that I think this season is an interesting one, in that we don't know why he was banished, and we don't really know what Lotor's overall like goal is necessarily, in that even the Paladins are confused by the end of the season as to why he's kind of attacking his own like stations and stuff like that, stealing stuff from his own people to do his own thing. The implication being that like Haggar has, basically some control over the Empire. He has some, and he wants to keep some information away from her, so he has to do some stuff on his own. But again, the lack of really knowing why there's like a rift between Lotor and the others is definitely a big one. But just the reveal of that kind of being why they're kind of evil as such right now. And when Zarkon wakes up, he finds out that Alfor destroyed his homeworld, but in reality he did that to stop basically the world being at threat from the entire universe, galaxy being a threat from this kind of evil presence from the other dimension. That he had warned Zarkon that like your planet is going to crumble apart if you leave the portal open the way it is. And so the only way he could shut the portal was to destroy his planet. So it's just really, you know, dark thing that he had to do. They did make sure to say that he like evacuated the whole planet prior to doing this. But when Zarkon is resurrected, he only hears and interprets it and uses Alfor destroyed my planet without the extra context to it to basically wage war against the Alteans. And this is part of the point where they go very quickly over things and just like, oh, he killed Alfor and that's where the Empire comes from. I hope if there's any extension on this flashback, I would like to see the end confrontation between Alfor and Zarkon. In a little bit more detail than they showed here, like actually show like if they had a final battle, because they showed like the final blow here, but like what was the exact details of what they said to one another as this happened. There's a few little things like that I feel they kind of should have went into, like we obviously never get explained to us where the other paladins went. We know Alfor is dead, we know Zarkon's still alive. The other three though, are they obviously they wouldn't be in cryosleep, they probably wouldn't be alive anymore, but like were they killed by Zarkon protecting the secret of where the other lines were, or what? And it also gives, I suppose, the reason for why Zarkon really wants Voltron is that not just because Voltron's a powerful weapon, but because Voltron is one of the only things capable of basically going through the dimensional portal to get more quintessence, which is what he needs to keep himself alive, which explains further why the Galran Empire is so desperate to mine quintessence and get it from whenever they can, which is the whole thing with the I can't even remember the name of the animal that has the connection to quintessence that was used in both season 1 and season 2. So yeah, there's just a lot of stuff with that flashback. The paladins themselves, you know, obviously the three ones that we didn't know about, we don't get a ton of detail on them, but I just like the idea that even prior to Voltron, they were this kind of team as like an alliance of like nearby systems and planets, and they just were this kind of general fighting team that represented this alliance between all these different nations. And that, yeah, like Alfor was part of it and like a key part of why they came together, but he wasn't never a really good fighter. He was primarily an alchemist kind of type thing, and it was his science and, you know, his reaction to what happened to Zarkon's homeworld, which is why Voltron was created, as a countermeasure to fighting this kind of dark entity that was coming out of the dimensional portal. So that's the exact reason for why Voltron was created in the first place, which I do find interesting in that it's not just that the Paladins of Voltron have always existed because of Voltron. They existed prior to Voltron and after it, and this is where we further get the idea that, you know, he wasn't the warrior, he wasn't the military leader, which is why Zarkon was basically obviously got the lead position in Voltron and he got the right hand. But yeah, just really, really good kind of backstory explaining a lot of things. There's so much to, again, I need to rewatch it again, there's so much to talk about with it, but yeah, I in general really did like it. Again, you know, how much did we really expect to get out of the old Paladins? It was just nice to know, like, oh, that's what species they are. Each of them, yeah, to some extent represented what the line was about. The guy who was piloting the blue line was very kind of chill, laid back. The goofball to a degree, you know, like they kind of call Lance parts of this season. That was fitting. You know, you had the bigger guy as the yellow line, and of course, he not different personality to Hunk, but definitely that kind of more bruiser character who wants to be very physical. And then, you know, the one female on the team is another species, and, you know, she is kind of the more intelligent one, I suppose, on the team, which just was nice to see overall. But I really feel that this was just something that was very needed at this point in time. I liked how they kind of, in that at the start of that episode, just kind of came out and said, okay, we're beginning to get all this stuff about like what Voltron's made of. Can you please just come out and tell us what exactly happened here, so we have context for what we're doing here. So I like that. But yeah, definitely there's some questions I think about Lothor's birth that are interesting. In that, okay, Zarkon and Haggar are alive for 10,000 years, but like, does that mean they had Lotor when they were like 9,900 and something years old, or what? Yeah, the rest of the season, not just episode 7. Episode 4 was interesting because it obviously played on the fact that Allura is, you know, one of the last Alteans, and how desperate she was to get in contact with other Alteans, while also establishing these other realities, which I suppose is another kind of thing to clarify about the last episode, of just that, what sort of alternate dimension or reality was that? Because it seemed like the other one that they went into were just like the real world, but it's like different people who have a different timeline, basically. Whereas the one with the evil presence in it kind of felt like it was another dimension type thing rather than another reality, because when they came out, it didn't really feel like they were in space. It felt like they were just kind of in this like quintessence, like energy dimension type thing. Maybe it's meant to represent some like future where just like energy and like darkness is taking over the world, but definitely an interesting thing to clarify there. And in this reality, it was kind of like what would have happened if the Alteans actually won the war and their technology was allowed to advance. And I don't know if they were meant to, like, this was meant to be a kind of a warning for Allura of like, if you beat the Galrans and take over and the Alteans return, what you can't do is basically just immediately counter the Galrans rule with Altean rule and just use your technology to take control over everyone. That's what you can't do, in terms of how they had this, you know, obviously their interpretation of like, we're not enslaving them as such, we're just like converting them so that they actually listen to us, and the whole mind control thing is what turns them against them in the end. But I think that the main core of that episode was obviously just to get the idea of like, here is another comet which has the material the Voltron is made from, and this is obviously what Lotor is going to get to create some sort of a weapon that can actually combat Voltron without just immediately being defeated. And that's exactly what happens. They come out, they manage to get out of that other reality. Immediately Lotor attacks, takes the comet, and obviously makes the ship that he has at the end out of it. And I suppose this is where the stuff with Shiro comes in, because the episode following episode 4 is The Journey, the one with Shiro in it. And definitely this is where a lot of theories are going to spawn from, in that I was kind of willing to just go along with it initially. I was just like, okay, I have some suspicions, but let me just try and interpret this as like, okay, this is real Shiro. I definitely had moments where I was just like, yeah, this isn't Shiro. I don't think this is Shiro. I think he believes absolutely that he is Shiro, but I don't think it is the Shiro that we know. And I think that in itself is just very fascinating, because they roughly try and give you an explanation for what happened, in the sense of like, Keith kind of says you unlock the Black Line's teleporting powers. So like, oh, Black Line has teleporting powers, okay. That might be part of why it happened, but then there's no real reason given for why he was, obviously, as they say, sent to like Galra testing facility or something like that. And yeah, just the idea, like, throughout that whole sequence as he's escaping, you get the clear fact that there is some sort of experimentation going on with the idea of like robots or like undercover clones or something like that, and them kind of wanting to make sure they're all right. That, plus some of the dialogue that is said by the two, you know, rebels that Shiro encounters, makes it sort of seem like this is very much this kind of setup thing of just like, okay, you've been here for 5 years, you know, like, you hit me with that thing, it happened before, it'll happen again. Or it's just like, wait, are the Galra actually like making multiple Shiros as some sort of a way to like get an insight into Voltron? Is that why like Lotor is kind of ahead of them, in that he has this information because Shiro is now back with the group, or not? it doesn't quite work because obviously some of the stuff that he's ahead of them on happens before Shiro comes back. But the question is obviously like is that project that Kuro's or whatever it's called project, um, is that a Lotor run project? Is it a Zarkon project, or is it a Haggar project or something else? Because it was very interesting to just I suppose have that idea throughout these episodes that Lotor is doing stuff that isn't that he's doing stuff and he's not acting like he is the leader of this empire because of the way he's kind of going about doing things, and that like if you're actually the emperor, the acting emperor of the Galran Empire, why do you need to steal the Teledav thing that they used at the end of last season? Why do you need to attack your own ships basically to do all this stuff? There's definitely some weirdness kind of going on here, and I think a lot of that will relate to potentially why Lotor was banished in the first place, the details behind that, and then what exactly he's trying to accomplish. And that yes, it seems like he does want to defeat Voltron, but it seems like there's a little bit more to it than that. Does he just want to be the ruler, but in a slightly different way to his father? Because he did say that was one of the most notable things that come the end. He says to Haggar that, I'm not my father. I'm the ruler, but I'm not my father. I'm not a copy of him. So, like, are they trying to say that, like, Lotor is kind of a clone of his father? If they're going down the cloning route or something like that, and they don't really seem to be just fully committing to, like, Haggar is his mother, clone? Maybe? But definitely where they go from here is really interesting in that it's like, okay, they now have an idea of obviously why he would want a ship made out of this material to go into the other kind of dimension to get quintessence. But like, why does Lotor need quintessence? Is the question, because it doesn't necessarily seem like he wants to live forever, and it seems like he is kind of against, to some degree, some of the Haggar's projects, which are very quintessence technology focused. So that's going to be fascinating to see. And then at the end, Zarkon waking up and being like quote unquote alive again. What's going to happen there? Is it actually going to be like kind of civil war within the Galran Empire of like Lotor's forces, Zarkon's forces, and maybe Lotor's not as bad as we think, or what? Either way, I think we have more or less met what seems to be the overall villain of not Zarkon himself, but whatever spirit kind of dark being is possessing him, and also Haggar. That will be probably the ultimate kind of bad thing guy in the end. But yeah, so, and then like what else is there to talk about? They did address the person that Keith met in the belly of the Weblum, and it was actually that main kind of commander girl who is a member of Lotor's team. They literally all they did was kind of confirm it's her. They didn't really seem to make that much of the connection all that much. They didn't really say why she was in there, if there was any significance to her being in there, outside of the fact that, oh, she got the Skulltrite crystals that were needed. So Lotor is planning this kind of basically incorporating all this Altaian technology together of having the transdimensional material from the Comet. Now he has the Skulltrite crystals to make the warp portals, which he's obviously researching from the Teledav. So is he trying to make something where it's like it's got the power of Voltron and the capabilities of the castle all in one, or something like that? That would be a really cool idea if it like is this thing that kind of can transform into a Voltron-like robot, but it also can create its own warp portals. But again, like to what aim? Is he just kind of hoping to have something like Voltron where it can be just this really powerful thing that can just get anywhere as he needs, whereas like right now the Galran Empire is purely about it's so big they can have an army everywhere, versus Voltron is tiny but it can get anywhere fairly quickly because of the technology that they have. Not exactly sure though. Anything else? Shiro's journey. again, like I think a lot is going to come out of that of just like, is this some sort of a thing that they test all the clones on, if like they are not a true Shiro clone unless they can get through all of these situations and get back to where they need to, and this is the first clone to properly do that. The idea of like a sleeper agent type thing, in that like when Shiro was giving Keith advice at the end, like was he being helpful or not, or has he done anything to in any way like badly influence what's happening here? I'm not sure. He kind of kept changing the goal of the mission, which kind of confused Keith. But I think they did kind of confirm more or less at the end that it was more that Keith struggled when the mission parameters changed, and that he wanted to focus on just one thing, couldn't adapt as quickly as other people could. But yeah, I think that's what I'm going to leave it at that for now. As I said, there will be the podcast review over the weekend where we'll cover all of this stuff in more detail. The full season will cover it in as much detail as needed. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the last 4 episodes of Voltron season 3. Thankfully, we don't have that long to wait until season 4, which will have a similar amount of episodes. I believe it's like October, I think they said. So not that far away at all. I'm really excited for it. I think just the build up from this makes me so excited to see what they do next. I just hope they can get a lot of the reveals that they need to do correct and make it all work. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.